friend. You're listening to The Sustainable Bodyworker, the podcast for massage therapists who want to grow thriving, purpose-led businesses without the burnout. Here we talk about nervous system aligned business strategy, pricing that makes sense, client work that doesn't deplete you, and how to build a career that actually supports your life. I'm your host, Gretchen Pop, massage therapist, mentor, educator, and recovering overachiever. Let's get into it. Alrighty, hello, Annette. Thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited that you are here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Of course, we have worked together in the past, and I always love talking to you.
Same, seriously. Actually, I wanted to let you know that this morning I've been working on a hypnotherapy track for calling in the people who inspire you. And I
Mm.
really wanted to let you know that as I've been working on this, I was listening to the track and you were one of the people that showed up. And as someone who you show up so authentically and beautifully online, and I would just wanted to let you know that you came into my little room, my circle of people this morning.
Oh, well, thank you. That's such a beautiful compliment. That's such a beautiful, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as we were chit-chatting before, you do have this really great way of authentically relating to people. You are really kind and loving. And one of the things that I honestly don't even remember how I first connected with you is probably just a suggested post on Instagram. And I remember that the thing that stood out so much about finding you was your ability to help people communicate. I've always had such a strong personal value of communication and being really intentional with the words that we say, especially when working with clients, because so much can get lost in the text and misunderstanding that it just allows things to derail really well. And for the sake of kind of establishing where this conversation flows, I'd love to talk about how, in your ability to help practitioners communicate better, where have you seen some of the more common places that practitioners have gotten stuck or maybe even just not shown up as authentically as they possibly can due to whatever fear,
Mhm.
anything like that, especially when enforcing policies,
Yeah.
establishing boundaries, things like that. Where are people getting stuck the most?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really great question because I think a lot of it comes down to people just feeling uncomfortable, disappointing clients, or even upsetting them. So when I talk to massage therapists, what I find is it's not really finding the words and saying the things. It's they're scared of what's going to happen after they say it. Um, and so that's what I think really keeps us stuck because we procrastinate. We're trying to find the right words, the right email, the right text. We're kind of hyper fixated on getting the words right because we feel like if we say the right thing, then they're going to accept it. They're going to be okay with it and just be happy about it, or at least at the very least, just not upset, and that is what we're trying to avoid. So I think if we could, in a perfect world, enforce our policies and set these boundaries and know with certainty that clients are going to accept this, I don't think any of us would ever have a problem saying anything. We would just say it. But it's hard because what you're dealing with is those big emotions of, challenging situations. We're looking at conflict resolution. We're getting into those kind of deeper interpersonal skills that maybe might not really come naturally to a lot of us. And it is hard to face someone that is upset or disappointed. That is tough just for anybody in any profession. So I think that sort of, again, that people pleasing and that avoiding of disappointing someone is really that root that keeps people stuck.
Yeah, totally. And I experience this quite a bit. You mentioned we oftentimes worry about what's going to happen rather than specifically what we're going to say. And I experience this so much with catastrophizing. I have
Mhm.
a wonderful tendency toward hypervigilance, and that causes my brain to get very vivid on the all of the ways that this could go wrong. We also have the ability to a vivid imagination also gives the ability to imagine all the things that could go right, but we are not wired to do
Mm.
that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so, I remember when working with starting like, okay, this is my script, this is the text I'm going to send. I already wrote this out. It's been pre-approved by the Facebook groups, right? And
Mhm.
even still, I'm finding myself like, but is this the kind of person that is going to retaliate with a negative Google review, because then the
Mhm.
negative Google review is going to cause X amount of clients to not want to work with me. And we kind of spiral from there. Do you see that a lot in working with people in that way?
Yeah, I mean, like, oh, like the dreaded negative Google review, right? Like the thing that we're all terrified of. And I'll be completely honest, I've not ever done the online reviews with my business. Like I've kind of been off grid with my hands-on practice. So I can't totally identify with that fear, but you know, as a consumer with the bad reviews, I I kind of go into them with like a little bit of skepticism. So when I read that somebody has had a bad review and I'm reading through it and they're complaining and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know who this person is. Maybe they're high maintenance, maybe they're nitpicky. And what really matters to me is the company's response.
Yep.
And so for me, like just again, I've never had to deal with this personally, but when people talk about this, I'm like, I think that's a really good opportunity for messaging, for demonstrating conflict resolution, for saying like, yeah, I'm human and I mess up and things happen and things are sometimes out of my control, but I can make it better. And in fact, if you're like a solo entrepreneur, you like this is it, you have the total control, you can absolutely make it better. And so it gives you an edge over maybe some of the larger chains where there has to be like a lot of red tape and stuff like that. So it really can very easily, I think, be spun into a positive thing.
I love that. It's so
Yeah.
important that we do focus on like, yes, the negative review is a beautiful opportunity to paint
Mhm.
a better picture, not to like, yell at the person like, well, you came in 15 minutes late already. I've seen so many
Right.
examples of like, ooh, that really could have been handled a little bit more
Yeah.
tactfully. And you are really good at creating those scripts. And I, really appreciate and I encourage everyone listening to this to go check out what you offer, because having those at hand
Mm.
when you receive those negative reviews or you receive those negative texts and like especially the phone call, don't even get me started on the phone call, the angry client, like if there's space it's a little easier to deal with, but when you've got something in your back pocket that you can be like, okay, and step aside from that heartbeat pounding, I'm
Yeah.
personally feeling attacked by this scenario, it just empowers you and gets you so much more you know in back in the driver's seat of your business.
Yeah, I mean, and it really, because it's all comes down to that impulsivity that happens with those big emotions, right? And so having somebody help you with scripts or you write that for yourself while you're not in the heat of the moment, it just really gives you something to rely on. And I've even noticed this for myself, like even though I help other massage therapists write scripts and think of things to say, when I'm in the moment, I have to have somebody else kind of check my work because I'm not like immune to that. Like I'm angry or I'm upset or I'm feeling, disappointed. And, I have to have somebody look at that's not emotionally invested into the situation, right? Because they can read it. So, I think sometimes with the scripts and stuff, and people will be like, oh, like you're so good at this. And, I do have a natural talent for words, but also I'm outside of the situation. And
Yep.
that really gives me an edge. So, I think even if you can do that for yourself, like, okay, what would I like to say to somebody if they no show an appointment? And do that while it's not happening. And then that gives you like a leg up when when and if it ever does happen, you've put yourself in a better position.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. The heat of the moment is not a good time to make decisions. I love going into the science of this too. Like our
Mm,
prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain when we can make rational, logical
mm,
decisions and the best right next step for our business is literally turned off. We do not
mm,
have access to it when we
yeah.
are in that triggered fight or flight, I gotta respond kind of place. So Yeah, just setting yourself up for success in that way is so, so important, especially
Yeah.
if you're like, oh, I've got such a great clientele. I've never had anyone no show. It's going to happen at some
It'll happen. Yeah, if you're in
point.
business long enough, it's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there's also been a lot of support I've seen that you've offered and discussed around raising prices. And I know that this can be a really triggering topic for a lot of body workers. There's not so much as before, but I see that there is, still lingering starving healer syndrome. And, also, I recently saw someone who apparently charges $1,500 for a 2 hour session, which is fantastic. Good for them. The demographic is totally different. I know we've spoken, and I've heard your take, and I'd love for you to share a little bit more on your take as well. The elusive six figures everyone's
Mhm.
talking about, and how it really doesn't, like, that it's such a random number and everyone's scenario is so entirely different.
Yeah.
It was a goalpost that I shot for and achieved, and I was like, well, okay. Like, my internal happiness is still very low. Regard, I
Mhm.
just happen to have more money now, and I guess more options, absolutely. But I'm curious, when you have supported people in the process of raising prices, or just even figuring out what price is right for them,
Mhm.
what tends to come up emotionally or energetically while someone's trying to consider that for their business?
Yeah. So again, I think this feeds back into that fear of disappointing people and upsetting people. And I've kind of always said, and what I've noticed the more I talk to people is that massage therapists really operate in a unique, tough spot, which is kind of that intersection of capitalism and being in a nurturing profession, which are very, clashing ideals, right? And so I guess if you think of these things on like a linear scale and you have like capitalism over here on one side and like being really nurturing and giving and generous on the other end of the spectrum, and we're spending all this time making decisions for our business, and every decision kind of falls somewhere on that line, right? Client experience is way over here on nurturing, that's feeding those decisions. So when we look at raising our rates, that's falling over towards capitalism. And so I think that brings up a lot of emotions for people where it feels sort of counterintuitive because there's not a lot of nurturing going into that decision. And that can just feel very, I don't know, it's just very uncomfortable because a lot of massage therapists get into it, to help and to give. And it feels, I don't know, it just feels, I think, a little abrasive for a lot of people. So I think to overcome that, what I found can really help is to crunch the numbers, which I don't like math. I'm not good at math. I know a lot of people probably don't want to do math, but what comes with that is confidence and confidence in the pricing. And so when you do, if you do receive pushback or people are upset or they're questioning your decision, you can confidently say, this price is not arbitrary. Like,
Hmm.
I didn't pick this price because Martha down the street is charging this price. I have calculated this out. This is what I need to make a livable wage. This reflects my skills and my education. This reflects the area and the demographic I'm trying to serve. And I'm not overcharging. I'm not undercharging. I'm not trying to be greedy. This is a very intentional, calculated price. And I think when you get to that point and your pricing is no longer arbitrary, then you do feel like you've put in a little bit of that nurturing back into it. That intention makes you feel like you've like really given some thought into the business, and that kind of balances it out for people a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. I personally like to take it one step further and add a little category to that. And it really is looking at how do we implant joy and more fulfillment into that calculation. And I want to encourage everyone listening to consider this as well when you crunch your numbers, because it's not just your bills that you have to pay. It's not just your mortgage. It's not just, the childcare and all of that stuff. what else do you want to be doing with your life? And it is absolutely okay to build that in. I know,
Mhm.
Annette, you were really good with building in time off, hands off time. You take, if I remember correctly, it's something like every quarter you take a good long vacation, something like that. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that. But that is absolutely, I want to say it's more than okay. It's like and I also don't like the word should, but I think we should be like
Yeah.
putting those into our calculations to make sure that we are really fueling the life that brings us joy in addition to being able to serve, because then we come from a replenished place. We come from a place where we are holding ourselves first, that whole tried and true, fill from a full cup,
Yeah.
don't drain from an empty well. And yeah, would you mind sharing a little bit about your time off and how you build your life around that, calculate, like how you, I guess I should say, how you have really built your time off and your those things into your life in that way?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it for me was the shift of, I'm a recovering people pleaser, right? So my initial reaction is always like just overgiving, being accommodating. And so I think, and I don't even remember what the catalyst was. It was probably just being burnt out to a crisp. But I really started to visualize my business as a tool that helps me achieve the lifestyle that I want to live. So it wasn't like my business is here to serve others, and that includes me. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it is there to fund my personal income so that I can have the life that I want. It's there to make sure that I'm living the life that I want to live. I'm not just this machine that's just endlessly giving over and over and over again. So I think we can really take back a lot of power, take back a lot of what our business, and like you said, adding joy into that. I love that, like to factor that in, because you can't forget about yourself. It has to be, it's it's a business and it's beautiful and we're all doing wonderful things for people, but it also has to serve us. And I would argue it has to serve us first.
Yeah, I tell this story of a man walking through the woods and he comes upon another man trying to saw down a tree with a blunt saw.
Mm.
And he's like, it would go a lot faster if you just took some time to sharpen the saw. And he yells at him back angrily, I don't have time for that. I got to chop down this tree. And we really need to sharpen the saw, whether that, I mean, I first heard that story in relation to practices like meditation or, making sure you have really good sleep. But I think also it really does apply to where we allocate the funds from our business in relation to the raising prices. It applies to everything. Like
Mm.
if you take that time to serve yourself first, which is so backwards as a female in the wellness profession. There's
Yeah.
so much conflicting like programming that is
Yes.
is happening there, but it really does allow you to show up better. I have noticed this so much where, I've got this endless to-do list always. People know me by my checklist. I have this endless checklist. I'm always checking things off. And if I start my day trying to check those off, maybe I will end up getting a little bit of it done.
Mm.
But oddly enough, if I spend a significant amount of time in the morning doing my meditation and my yoga and all of that good stuff, that might have been a really significant chunk of my day, but that checklist gets checked off really, really quickly, even though I technically spent less time on it. And I think the
Mhm.
same applies for how we allocate the revenue in our business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, I love this conversation. And, one thing I really appreciate too is I've always admired how gentle, kind, loving you are with your approach in working with people. I know that has a lot to do with why people are just drawn to your Instagram and the way that you connect with people. And I'm curious if you can share how your own path, you mentioned that you're burnt out to a crisp.
Mm.
How did you kind of evolve these boundaries? You mentioned that you've got that cancer energy and that so loving and all of that. So I'm very curious what it took for you to kind of own that side of you without losing the softness that you share so
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the compliments. It's, again, it's really kind. And I think, It's a lot of therapy.
Gotta love that
A
therapy.
lot of therapy. And I think, it's funny because I was just talking to a friend. I think there's something about getting into your mid 40s that boundaries suddenly become a little easier.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's just some sort of shift. It's probably hormones, but it does, it does tend to get easier. But, in all honesty, looking back, like big picture, it was really just about being miserable for a really long time. Um, and I think when you're a people pleaser, you like to believe that you have an endless amount to give and that no sacrifice is too much. And even if you're unhappy, you can figure it out and it's for a good cause because someone else feels better. Somebody else got a massage. I was able to squeeze them in. Now they feel better. And there's, we tack on some nobility to that. Um, and, but the truth is, like the well does run dry.
Yep.
And it does. And it may not be immediate. For me, it was years. And then, you're facing like a fork in the road where it's like, okay, I can either start doing these things that feel really uncomfortable, that feel really impossible, or I can walk away. But there's no continuing on as is. Like there just really isn't. Because you just become so resentful and you can only fool yourself for so long. And then you can tell it's showing up in your work and you're angry every time you see a client and you feel like you're giving too much and they're not appreciative and they don't understand how much you're giving. And there's all these strings attached. And that just feels really gross. So I think, when I got to that point, I started looking at more massage therapists that were more assertive than I was, like, kind of came in very confidently, very much like, I don't care. Seemingly, it felt like, I don't care. This is how I'm running my business. If you don't like it, you can leave. I'll find other clients, very like seeing how the other side of the world lived. And so once I saw that, it was kind of like, ooh, okay, like that's scary. Like I can't just magically turn into this whole other person. And it's not in me to be that assertive, but how can I sprinkle in a little bit of that? And still maintain, my softness. So it's kind of like you see that other extreme and you're like, okay, this is how they said they enforced their no-show policy. This was the text they sent. This was the advice they gave. And I'm like, okay, well, that feels really harsh. So how can I take what they said and, add an emoji or make it feel a little softer, but I still get to the same end point. I still, we still reach the same goal. So, I think when we're in that spot, I think it's really hard to make it feel like it's not binary, like you either have to be assertive or kind. But there's like a really beautiful gooey middle that we can find. And again, we all kind of operate somewhere in there when it comes to our business.
Hey, friend, quick pause in the episode because I have to share something that's made a huge impact on both my practice and the work I teach inside my courses. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you probably remember the teal cups I started out with. Those were iconic in my early days of teaching cupping therapy. But here's the thing I learned the hard way: not all silicone cups are created equal. I started noticing huge inconsistencies between sets: cups that discolored fast, sharp edges that irritated my client's skin, and it just wasn't cutting it for the level of work I was doing. And in 2020, I found Global Cupping, and I've never looked back. Their cups are hands down the clearest, smoothest, and most consistent silicone cups I've ever used, and I've tried a ton. The difference in quality is immediately noticeable. These cups stay clear even after repeated disinfection, and they're built to stand up to high-level sanitation protocols, something I insist on teaching in my neuromuscular cupping therapy trainings. What I also love is the customizability. I can mix and match sizes in a set, no more stockpiling a bunch of cups I never use, and their silicone facial cups are my absolute go-to now for jaw work. No more rubber bulbs on the glass cups to worry about disintegrating, just easy to clean, durable tools that are comfortable for both the client and the therapist. In my own approach, I combine cupping with movement, massage, and retraining at the neuromuscular junction. And that means I need cups that can move with the body, grip well, and feel safe and smooth on sensitive tissue. These silicone cups, especially the 55 hardness to start with, are perfect for that. And for chronic pain clients, especially those with nervous system dysregulation, the ability to glide, pause, and work in dynamic ways is key to breaking pain cycles. Plus, their customer service, impeccable. I'm a stickler for this. I've had questions, students have had questions, and they're always quick, professional, and just genuinely kind. It makes a really big difference. So, whether you're brand new to cupping or you're refining your technique, this is the gear I recommend. It's an investment in your practice that pays off in results, ease of use, and your client's comfort. Use code NEURO at checkout for 20% off your first order at globalcupping.com. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also like people who are in the process of going from the either the softness and learning how to have boundaries or maybe being too assertive and getting negative because people do get negative reactions to that and then get more and more and more resentful sometimes. So the people who are in either process of trying to find that gooey middle that you're talking about, I feel like there's a little reminder needed that like it's okay to be messy and it's gonna be messy and you're gonna make mistakes, but that's going to give you feedback. Like you can try your softer approach and the response that you get isn't necessarily a personal attack if it doesn't work out the way you intended, but it is feedback to be like, okay, well, that's how that landed. And I can take that and see how that, I can take notes for myself and try it again next time. One thing too that I love that you said too about seeing other people and looking at other people, I think that that is truly the beauty of the Facebook groups. And the groups and the communities like you and I are building and having people who are similar in intention. I think the Facebook groups sometimes get a little noisy and a little chaotic because there's so many people on like that spectrum is wide. In the more intentional communities, it's a more narrow spectrum of people who align more with what you're trying to build. So it can give a little bit more specific feedback when you know where on that spectrum you land. But I think that that's the benefit of having that community because when you see people doing something very differently than you, it gives you the permission slip to try because we are working with these programs, these ideas of who we're supposed to be, and fitting into those shoes can be really, really challenging sometimes. I mean, I tell my story of fitting in the shoes of the six-figure clinic owner, and I was being encouraged to open up multiple locations, and I was kind of at the precipice of like, okay, 3 more years to get this to the place where I can franchise and get really, really big, and all the panic attacks that were like, you know, those shoes were Monica's boots. If anyone knows what I am talking about, those were Monica's boots, and they were not good, and if I'm sorry, if you don't know that reference, you might not want to be on this podcast anymore. No, I'm joking. No, it's just we need that permission. We need that permission slip. And there are so many beautiful ways to do things in this business. And it especially with the way that technology is moving, you know, I love sharing how we can have online offers and we can have little extra programs for our clients that are not entirely in person. We can share things with them online and charge more money without having to be complete full contact with them all the time. The level of technology that we have accessible to us now is completely just the opportunities have expanded so much. And I love following, and it's part of the reason why I'm loving this podcast so much is because being able to connect with and show all of these stories of how many opportunities there are if you just kind of listen to that little ping and try it out. And if it works, it snowballs. It will naturally snowball. And you know, you started doing these online offerings, and I actually find it really interesting that you mentioned that you're not super online with your hands-on practice, but you've got such a beautiful presence for massage therapists. You have the online offering. So I'm curious, what got you to step into that online role?
Yeah, well, you know, I think so when with my massage practice, I started back in like 2012. So, you know, Instagram wasn't like the marketing you know, world that it is today. And I feel like it was a little easier to build word of mouth back then, like being a little bit offline. But I knew like when it came to mentoring, I knew I had to kind of step into that online place because I was trying to reach such a broader audience. I mean, like, you are hopefully global. You're kind of being able to make these connections in other countries. And, I love talking to massage therapists that, live in other states within the United States and kind of like how that's operating, what that looks like. And then other countries are even more fascinating, and so I just, I knew I had to reach it was just a bigger net being cast. Where for my massage practice, it's pretty local. I never really felt like, well, I don't really have to go viral. I'm not, I can only handle so many clients. I don't really need to have that sort of reach. Plus it's fun. Like, I don't know, connecting with other massage therapists is fun. Like, it's fun to add that into the business and get to talk shop and be relatable and put these things out here and, kind of low key vent and complain in like not a real downer kind of way, just kind of like, hey, the laundry sucks, right? Like, who else does not want to fold their sheets today?
For real. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
your humor around the massage business is great. And that's, I think, one of the things people love about you. Yeah, it's just interesting that, you mentioned that we don't have to go viral. And I think there's a lot of people feeling like you have to have this strong presence on Instagram in order to get clients and, or even just on social media in general. And, that's not always the case,
Yeah.
especially for a business that wants to really focus on the local community.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think a lot of people spend a lot of energy on that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the hard part, I think, about social media is it's all about the metrics, right? Like it's how many likes and comments and followers. And, for somebody like you and I, like where we have this other broader community of, we are trying to reach massage therapists on a grander scale. But when you're talking about a hands-on practice, you know, um, somebody in the UK can follow me, but they're probably never going to book a massage. So like, how advantageous is that for me as a business to have 10,000 followers if 9,500 of them aren't really ever even going to book a massage,
Yeah.
So if the goal is to get clients on the books, I would say, the better approach is trying to keep, almost trying to keep your social media small and local. You know what I mean? Like interacting with other local small businesses, like, making sure to really nurture that really small bubble, which feels like it goes against everything we're ever taught about social media. But if you're trying to get bodies on the table, that's who you need to reach.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 There's so much that we like really overthink about all of this, and
Yeah.
we spread ourselves so thin. And we've got to do the social media thing, we've got to do the client retention thing, we've got to rebook, we've got to make sure our aesthetic is on point, our
Yeah.
branding, what is my logo. And we're just, either we're kind of spinning in this overthinking process,
Yes. Yeah.
or we go straight into shutdown, avoid.
Mhm.
Maybe it's, we have to send an email, or we're promoting a new special that we're really excited about, but we're scared of that imposter syndrome, like, who am I, or whatever. Maybe we're
Yeah.
making a really hard decision for our business, whatever it is. I'm curious if you have a special process or how you like to help people reconnect to their internal clarity or momentum that they once had.
Yeah, so I think, when we're talking about clarity, and you kind of already mentioned this when you talked about like it's probably going to be messy. I like, yeah, like, but I think for me, clarity really only happens when we do the thing. Like it doesn't really happen as we're researching and perfecting the words and learning more. It really only happens when we actually do it. Like up until that point, it's really just a bunch of guesswork and crossing your fingers and hoping that it turns out okay. And so, again, like going back to the social media stuff, like if you find yourself like overthinking, like, well, I can't get the graphics right. I don't know what kind of caption to write. I don't know how to make a video, and you're kind of just stuck in I don't know what to post, or I don't know how to post, or every time I do something, it's not perfect, you will feel stuck, because then that clarity and that confidence is only going to come after you do it. You just have to post. And so, I guess kind of what I tell people is kind of what you said, like you kind of have to accept it's going to be messy. You're probably not going to put out great posts. You're going to look back in a year and cringe at yourself. But every time you post, you learn something. Again, like you get that feedback, you adjust, you pivot, then you find out like what engaged people, what worked, what got you a lot of comments, if that is your goal. Right. And it's very similar to what we all experience with massage. I mean, at some point, we all graduated and we had to go out there and just try. And it's like, well, what happens if I do this stretch, or I do this, or I add this, or I add cups, or what if I do, it's all this experimentation. And none of us are doing the same massage we were doing right after graduation. And that happened because we just did it. So, I mean, nobody wants to hear it, but as scary as it is, you just have to do the thing.
Yeah, you mentioned the cringe, and it like immediately comes to mind my very first Facebook Live video. If anyone wants to pull up my clinic's page, it's still there on Facebook. Go back far enough to find my first Facebook Live where I'm talking about cupping. And it's funny because I remember cringing even in the moment watching it.
Oh,
But at the same time too, I never thought that I would be comfortable going in front of the camera. Like if someone told me I was running a podcast 3 years ago, I'd be like, you're silly.
yeah.
And the thing is, having that comparison is
Mhm.
such a beautiful experience to give yourself to, so it might be cringe, but also an opportunity to be like, wow, look at where I'm at now. Okay, I've actually gotten a result. And you make me think about something. I believe it was Gary Vee who was mentioning how many things that he has tried, and how it's kind of
Mhm.
just the mark of the entrepreneur to just try this thing, try this thing, try this thing, try this thing, try this thing. And for the sake of not hustling, let's not hustle, 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 but try the thing, try the thing, try the thing. Something's gonna stick. And
Yeah.
the only way you're going to like actually get that feedback is if you fail a couple of times. I think Thomas Edison invented the light bulb after 10,000 or 1,000, something, some thousand attempts.
Yeah.
And a famous quote from him is like, I didn't fail. I've just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. And I
Mhm.
love that. And so if we put that same approach to just trying the thing,
Mhm.
obviously we're not going to try and hurt people with our techniques. Make sure
Yeah.
we're working with someone that we're comfortable with if we want to do that technique thing. Also, like, you're not going to die if you stutter on a Facebook Live. Actually, it
Right.
makes you relatable. And again,
Yes.
circling back to one of the things that makes you so relatable and has like given you the community that surrounds you so much. I mean, I follow you. Like, I know it sounds like I'm fawning over you. I just really love how like approachable you are, and that literally is because of the relatability. I saw a
Mhm.
comment that you had said on your Instagram. You were replying to someone about like, look, I just have to post. Like, I post
Mhm.
the thing before I even allow myself to think about it, even though like if I were to look at that, like maybe I'd be judging this aspect of how I look, or maybe I should change the lighting or whatever. And I love that information, because it really, there is that, if you give yourself space, if you give yourself time, it actually increases fear. And at the same time, our subconscious mind is always telling us, like, just sit on that idea for a little bit longer. You're going to be ready when you have that next certificate. You're taking that course in the next couple of months. Take that course and then increase your prices.
Mhm.
Our subconscious mind makes us wait, because it's like, yes, give me that fear. You'll never do the thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just got to do the thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I mean, that's a really good point too, because I think we tend to tell ourselves like, well, if I wait until I have this much more education, if I wait until I take this class on making Instagram reels, then I'll be better. But it's like, well, maybe not, but eventually you still just have to do it. So
True.
I mean, like, if you're gonna spend all this time, like, adding to the repertoire and, increasing your education, that's not enough to get it done. you still have to do it. So if you're gonna, if you are the type of person that really leans into, gathering up a bunch of education, a bunch of knowledge, you still have to set yourself a deadline. You still have to be like, okay, well, next Tuesday, it has to be applicable. We're going for it, good or bad.
Yeah.
And what I really love about you mentioning your Facebook Live, your first one being, so cringe. And I applaud you for keeping that up. And I think it's not only good for you to go back and watch it, but I think it's really nice to have that out there as an example for other people to see, because, we always talk about like, you only see people's highlight reel. And I'm sure, people watch you and, you have all these workshops and you have the community and you're doing all these beautiful things and you have this history and this experience, and people can be like, wow, like Gretchen, like, she's got it all together. And this is just, look at her and she's so successful. And it's like, well, I wasn't like this on day one,
Yep.
and you can you have let me send you the link. Let me show you, because your Facebook Live is probably going to look a lot like this.
Yep.
And so I just think that's really nice to be able to show people, that starting point. Cause I think a lot of times we tend to want to erase that. We want to be like, I don't want that out. I don't want that to be out there. Cause that's not who I am anymore, but it's a big piece of the story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because you mentioned day one. That was day one for me showing up on the Facebook Live, but I was already a good 10 years into my practice and talking to clients about
Yeah.
that type of thing. And I had been active on Facebook, didn't go live, but I'd still been posting on Facebook and putting myself out there. So like it's still a stepping stone journey, right? Like it's still, there was so much that got to that point too. And it's, oh, the opportunity just to be like, you can again, like I was the most stuttery kid. I was in the drama community in high school, but
Okay.
I was never on stage. I was always in the back. Like I did mics and sound because I was
Okay.
comfortable hiding. And again, like to put me up here on a screen is like terrifying for that version of myself. And there's so many people out there that really do believe, well, that's just who I am. And if that, 10 years ago, that would be me just saying, well, that's just who I am and I'll never do that. And that, not to say that everyone has to like get up and show themselves off in that way. But what does the most abundant version of yourself daydream about? What
Mhm.
are those daydreams? And when you can connect to that, well, what steps are involved in order to get to that point? Those steps will be scary because they're stepping into a version of you that you are not yet. And your subconscious mind is designed to keep you from being this or keep you from being different. Because when you stay same, you stay safe. There's so much science behind why anthropologically we have developed that sameness need. And the fact of the matter is if you have a vision, if you have a version of your life and business that you daydream about, you got to take those steps. You got to do those things that push you out of your comfort zone, whether it's showing up on Facebook Live or offering a specific service to your clients that you don't think it will resonate with. You just got to do the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, being an entrepreneur is a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall. I mean, it really is. And I think, you do really spend a lot of time in trial and error. I think a lot of massage therapists probably are doing it and not even really realizing it, they're doing it, because a lot of times it's such micro versions of trying things out. It's kind of like, well, hey, this client, I'm going to try starting them supine this time. Or, like it doesn't have to be these big dramatic things in our business, but we are always kind of like observing and adjusting and seeing how we can just tweak things like, well, maybe if I move the bench that they sit on before their massage like 6 inches this way, maybe they're more likely to put their coat where I want them to put their coat. Or, you know what I mean? So we're always just kind of, I think, observing, which is part of, I mean, that is a lot of being a massage therapist, is, observing and working from what we see. So yeah, I think that's definitely about taking some risk and understanding that, mistakes and failures, I don't think are as dramatic as we make them out to be. I think we're much more resilient than we give ourselves credit for.
Well, they're necessary too, right? And you
Yeah.
mentioned like I think I'll start my client supine this time. I remember the first time a client specifically asked to start supine, and I always start my sessions face down. Like
Mm.
that, but the people pleasing at least did its
Yeah.
job in that case where it's like, okay, I'm here to serve the client. And it
Yeah.
made me step out of my comfort zone. And
Yeah.
I've learned, through the years that if I'm uncomfortable, in certain scenarios, like
Sure.
obviously like people are pushing my boundaries, we got to work with that. But if I'm uncomfortable with like learning a new skill or trying a new technique or approaching conversation differently, then that means I'm growing. I remember I was in I went to Costa Rica to take Don Lewis's
Yeah.
smart class,
Yeah.
and I remember I actually was like really close to tears at one point while trying this technique. It's a really profound technique,
Hmm.
and but it's so different than what I do. And for the longest time, I mean, I've been this educator in this technique of cupping, and I know my anatomy and I know what I'm doing. And people have been like, wow, you're so knowledgeable. So there's that, ego that's been like,
Yeah.
I'm good. So I go into this experience and I'm like, not able to figure it out. I remember one of the TAs came over. No, actually, I think it was Dawn herself that came over and she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm used to pushing people, Dawn. I don't know
Yes.
what's going on.
Yeah.
And I had this aha moment of like, this is so good for me right now.
Yeah.
The fact that I am like this close to being in tears about
Mhm.
trying this different technique, so good for my soul. Sucks for my ego. Really
Mhm.
sucks for my ego,
Yeah.
but it's good for my soul. And I
Yeah.
want people to develop that muscle a little bit, or at least that like ping of like, oh, that slight discomfort is actually a good thing. I'm like, we try and avoid it so much, but it's actually such a good thing for our business and being
Yeah.
able to approach people in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the other side of that too is like, it doesn't always mean that it works out. Like you're uncomfortable and you try a new thing and then you're like, yep, I was right. That is not the way to go. You know what I mean? So like when you talk about the client requesting starting supine and you're like, okay, let's try it out. Like, let's see what that looks like. And then again, you observe, you adjust. And then maybe the next time that happens, then maybe you say like, hey, I'm curious, like what are you thinking is going to be different? Like why, why are you making that request? Because in my experience, I found that, if that's what you're looking for, this is actually going to work better. And you're not trying to like talk them out of it, but you just have, again, like more knowledge in the bank to just create a better experience. And so I think sometimes when we talk about pushing ourselves to those uncomfortable places and trying new things out, it's like we already are trying to tell ourselves that we have to like it
Mm.
at the end. Like okay, so on the other end of it, I have to like bring this on, or I have to like it, or I have to be able to like incorporate this into my business. But it could also just be like a really hard no for you. But now you know.
Yes.
And you're not guessing and you're not just making assumptions. You've tried it, you've seen it in real time, and it's like, okay, like now I know. Again, it comes from that clarity from doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that gives you authentic confidence too,
Yes.
right? It's very challenging to be confident in something. Yes, you can have an opinion. You can be very opinionated about something
Sure.
that you've never dabbled in before. But when
Yeah.
you actually have and you have that experience, then you change from opinionated to confident in your
Yeah.
own specific way of coming about it. And I love how you added on that piece of, and I think my former self could have really benefited from that, like client request of
Mhm.
starting supine, and instead of just being like, okay, yeah, finding out more information. I always
Yeah.
come back time and time again to the seek first to understand, then be understood. And just getting more information. It's okay. I don't think, I think it's a people pleaser thing to not want to ask more questions because I think, at least in my family growing up, asking more questions wasn't like impertinent and not not just following along with the thing.
Yeah.
And there, I mean, that's just a huge misconception about communication in general, especially when it comes to serving our clients better and understanding what it is they actually need. And there's so many misconceptions about communication. And that brings me to questioning if there's one misconception about good communication that you find yourself busting again and again with practitioners that you work with?
Oh. So I think it's that good communication means that there's going to be a lot of words.
Ooh.
I think that um when we're I think especially when we're nervous about something, and again,
Mhm.
like back to that fear of disappointing and upsetting clients, like lots of recovering people pleasers in this profession, and we talk about like, let's say like raising rates, for example, and we tend to over explain, and we say, well, I'm just trying to communicate really well. I'm trying to be transparent. I'm trying to help them understand why I made this decision. And so, I think it's not that transparency doesn't really come from like how many, the volume, how many words you say. It's what the quality of what is shared, and the actual things that you share, and so as a recovering people pleaser myself, I find that really striving and being conscious of keeping things concise really keeps that people pleaser in check. Because I do tend to want to over explain, because again, we're going back to like, well, if I could just get them to understand, if I could just, write out my thought process on how I came to this. And it's just like, stay out of the weeds. Good communication doesn't necessarily mean like every email is a lecture. you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that over explaining. I've recently been exploring my human design, and
Mm,
there's one aspect, I think it's the sun gate, and it's like how you're supposed to shine. And people who know human design better than I do are probably like, that's not what that means. But that's how I've interpreted it, as like how
okay.
you're meant to shine. And one of the, there's pieces to this where it's like there's kind of a signature, there's a signal that you're being in your gift, you're operating from your gift, or that you're suppressing your gift. And one of mine is over explaining.
Mm,
And I absolutely do that when it's like where I don't feel like I'm being heard, I don't feel like I'm being understood. And so giving more and more and more information, I often repeat myself. And I think that that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because it is a people pleasing thing. We want to remain liked. We love our clients. We want to continue serving them. And there's so much desire to want to relate to them in that way and to have them understand us in that way. But at the end of the day, that over explaining isn't serving. It's actually kind of more of like a shadow, and it's coming from a place of inadequacy,
mhm,
perhaps.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. That's a very real possibility. Yeah. And again, it comes back to just that uncertainty that, we kind of feel because we don't know how clients are going to accept the things that we say. And we're trying to control the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, control is one of my things too. Hello.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we
Yeah.
all want to be, we all want to be liked and accepted, and we want our clients to enjoy us and enjoy coming in. And I guess it's never really lost on me that massage therapists, like usually when they're in these kind of places, like it comes from a really good place, like the intention, that desire to help. And it's not that you have to give that up. Um, and it's hard. I mean, it's so hard because, you think about like, we get this education and we learn this skill, and we have this beautiful thing that helps people, and we have this ability to help people feel better. But then, no, I'm going to say no to you, or I can't give that to you because I have limits and capacities and boundaries. And so there is that, like that push pull, of needing to say no, but that just feels like it feels so hard because of course we all want to be able to give this freely and generously to as many people as possible. But I mean, how many people can you really give a massage to every month?
Yeah.
I mean, there is a limit. There is an actual limit. And it's probably, I would say most people end up working a little bit beyond their capacity.
Yeah. Well, and then it circles back to what you were talking about before with the resentment. When you get to that
Yeah.
place of like you're giving and over giving and giving and giving some more, and we end up with that resentment. When you were talking about that previously, a particular story came to mind. Oh man, I was just so fried. And I remember I had a new client on the books and I had misread what their appointment was, whether it was a hour appointment or a 90-minute appointment. And I think it was my last client of the day. So the timing didn't even matter. It didn't mess with my next appointment. But I gave him a 90-minute session and I charged him for a 90-minute session. And I looked at the calendar at the end of my day, just kind of closing up and recognized, oh man, this was a 60-minute session. And he didn't say anything. He was perfectly kind. He paid the full price.
Yeah.
But the right thing to do was contact him and let him know I overcharged you. I'm refunding you this money. Thank you for, just being so kind. I hope I didn't mess up with your day. And he was incredibly kind. I mean, he got a refund and a longer massage than he wanted. Like he ended up with the, the
Yeah.
long end of the stick, right? But I remember how heartbroken I was. And, I was past the point of being resentful of my clients. And I started turning that resentment inward. And I was brokenhearted from that experience. Because, I mean, I could have just gone on and been like, whoop, I made more money than I thought I was going to. And you didn't say anything. Whoop-ha. But like, that's just not who I am. Like, honesty is a huge integrity piece for me. And so I really had to refund that and communicate about that. And I remember just standing there as processing that refund, just crying, brokenhearted. I was so tired and I needed that money. That's the way that it came down to it. Like I really needed that income and I needed the energy that I had overgiven accidentally. And part of the reason why that happened is because I was so fried. I had been overgiving so much to the point where I was not capable of really clearly seeing what length of session I was supposed to be doing. I was so distracted. And I think so many of us get to that point where the resentment for the client builds and builds and builds to the point where eventually it becomes resentment toward ourselves and we get brokenhearted like that. And I wish we don't have to have that experience, but at least for me, like having that experience, it gives me that ground to be like, I don't want anyone else to get to that point. I'd like to help people get to a point where they're, not burning out and able to do all of the cool things in addition to that. And so I really want to thank you for, bringing the conversation around to, how that really does ultimately affect us and how we can approach that with a little bit more kindness and softness to ourselves.
Pausing the episode real quick to share something I personally use and deeply believe in. If you're like most body workers I know, you've probably had those days where your nervous system is completely fried from back-to-back sessions, admin chaos, and way too much time hunched over a screen. Maybe you want to meditate, but your mind is racing. You want to ground, but your body won't let you. And that's where the In Harmony Practitioner mat comes in. This isn't just a relaxation mat, it is vibroacoustic therapy, which uses low-frequency sound vibrations through the body to stimulate the vagus nerve, activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and reduce pain and inflammation. It's the real deal. I got mine back in 2021 for my clinic, originally for clients to use before bodywork or a sauna session, but honestly, I used it just as much for myself. It became my go-to regulation tool between client days and computer-heavy work, especially when I was struggling with back pain, insomnia, and fibromyalgia. This gave me a reset that was both physical and mental. And it's not just anecdotal either. Research shows that vibroacoustic therapy can do really amazing things. It improves heart rate variability, which is a key marker of nervous system resilience. It reduces cortisol and supports deep theta brainwave states, meaning calmer minds and better healing outcomes overall. And it helps with chronic pain, anxiety, PTSD, and even creative flow by resyncing your body's internal rhythms with soothing full body frequencies. It's also a powerful tool for your clients. I used to offer it before sessions to help clients drop into a regulated state, especially those who arrived overwhelmed, anxious, or overstimulated. You know, the ones who can't relax on the table until 30 minutes in. This helped them release their baggage at the door so that we could actually do deeper, more effective work from the start of their actual session with me. Some practitioners even use it during sessions to enhance results. I personally prefer to keep it separate, but I did love pairing it with herbal wraps, giving clients a way to receive deeply without being touched, which can be incredibly healing for trauma-informed care. And here's the thing. The nervous system is the entry point for transformation. If we can calm it, everything changes for you, for your clients, for your business. And if you want to experience it for yourself or add it to your practice, head to iaminharmony.com and use my code NEURO5 for 5% off. It's a write-off for your business, and honestly, it's one of the best investments I've ever made. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Like what I was saying about, I started looking at other massage therapists who were kind of somewhat what I wanted to be. Like, you know, it was a little extreme, but it was an example. And so I think, you know, just making sure that in some way you're surrounding yourselves with other massage therapists and communities that support you, but it's not necessarily an echo chamber.
Mm.
And, you know, they're willing to point things out to you in a really kind, respectful way because they do want the best for you and they're going to help you, you know, kind of take those scary steps while not trying to turn you into something else, like not trying to put you into like a cookie cutter program, you know, like really allowing for that autonomy. But I think the other part of it is even in taking in all those perspectives, there has to be some realization that you have to blaze your own trail.
Mm.
Again, like throwing the spaghetti at the wall, right? Like I wish that we could copy paste situations and what worked to bring me success. I could just say, here, Gretchen, do these 10 things and you will have the exact same thing that I've experienced. And that's just impossible, really. I mean, everything is just so nuanced and individual. So I think admitting that the truth is unique to you and you can gather these perspectives, but eventually you have to really sit down and reflect on what that's going to look like to you. And I think once you start to have that, like lean into that authenticity and have that sort of reflection to yourself that like, okay, I can't just keep trying to copy paste. I have to do something for myself. Then I think that that uncertainty starts to subside because you're starting to create something that feels really good to put out into the wild. You know what I mean? Like that just becomes like energizing and it becomes exciting and it really leans into that creativity. And I know that is scary. I mean, it really is. It's scary because what you're really ultimately facing is making a lot of mistakes. You know, I mean, it's part of it. But again, it just goes, I mean, like kind of just repeating that message of like, but that's where the clarity happens. You know, that's where the confidence comes in. Like you just, at some point, you're going to have to do the thing, whether that's starting to enforce policies, reducing your hours, saying no, having better boundaries, raising your rates, like whatever that impossible task feels like, eventually you're just going to have to do it.
Yeah. I think one of the best pieces of advice I received along my journey was trying to pinpoint what the thing is that you're avoiding. And that's usually where the biggest gold mine is going to
Yeah,
be, or at least the best opportunity for personal growth.
yeah,
And yeah, so I think if anyone could just shine a light on the one thing that they've been avoiding, and I know
mm,
that's not the information that anyone right now wants to hear.
yeah,
I recently got the same advice from my coach right now, and it's like, I think I explicitly said to her, like, damn it, I don't want to do that. And she's like, yep, that's how you know.
yeah,
And
yeah.
but you know, I love that you said the having the community and having your cheerleaders, having the people who are going to like hold you, but also, you know, in a positive way challenge you and,
Mhm.
you know, give you that opportunity for growth and really connecting with what is important to you as a person and not just copying what other people did. I did that for 11 years growing my clinic. I did the thing that everyone said is the way to be successful, and it did not feel good. And I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about developing the hypnotherapy tracks for the
Mhm.
students in my program right now, because it really does allow you to tap into what's important to you. And it's also another reason why I'm excited to be communicating with more and more people who have communities for massage therapists and collaborating, because I have a community. I'm
Mhm.
very passionate about it. You have a community and it's amazing. And I'm very happy to promote it, even though like technically we are a competitor, right? You know what I mean? Like, but like at the same time, I'm like, it's not, right? Like if you
No,
have a
yeah,
corner over there where people feel nourished in the way that they need to
right.
feel nourished, I want to send people to you. I want them to go get
Sure.
that nourishment. And I love that. And I would love for you to have an opportunity to share how people can connect with you, work with you, where they can find you if they don't already.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I mean, that it really is generous. And I think I greatly appreciate that sort of collaborative spirit because, um, I mean, you and I have talked about imposter syndrome before, and I definitely tend to spiral in that. And I think, it's really hard. And, massage therapists might feel this too. Like, I think we see somebody doing something similar to us and we start comparing, and then it's just like, why should I even be doing this? Because they're doing it so well.
Mm,
But, you and I have been in the game long enough that we know you and I can get on and do a video and say the exact same script. I mean, we
mm,
can say the exact same thing, give the same advice, and it's just going to land differently with different people. Like some people gravitate towards you, some people gravitate towards me, and it's not right or wrong or who did it better. It's just, I don't know, it's just like you just flock to your people, I
yeah.
guess, and it's always, I think it's always important too to have a different perspectives, you know, like again, you kind of see how the other half is living, and then you're like, okay, like what can I take from that? Like, I like this piece. You don't have to take everything as its whole. So that collaboration is, I think, really an important piece. And then going back to like the communities, like I think again, you and I have seen in both of our spaces how that support really ripples out, and it does, it lifts up the individual, it lifts up the community, it spreads out into the industry. We see people, I think, as they feel more supportive, they feel more likely to share, they feel more likely to encourage other people. They have found that like it is possible, and that, that's really it's really contagious.
Yeah, you actually made me think of something that I was thinking about earlier. The fact that we see someone else doing it should not be any reason to not do it. It literally should be our permission slip.
Yeah,
For example, like when McDonald's became a thing, did that stop Burger King or
right.
Arby's or
Yeah,
any other burger joint?
yeah.
No, it's a permission slip to show, oh, that works. And I
Hmm.
can do that thing.
Hmm.
So thank you
Hmm.
for saying that, because really, like, having the ability to see other people
Hmm.
do something that is mildly inspiring or even slightly related to what it is you wanted to do, let that be your permission slip.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the other side of that for me is like if you do tend to slide into imposter syndrome and you're spiraling a little bit, I think like we have to be really careful, at least I know for myself, like when some people stop being inspiring and they stop feeling motivation, like motivating, then I need to hit mute, you
Mm,
know, and you can go back to it, right? But it's just kind of like just being really conscious of like, how does this make me feel? Like, does it inspire me and motivate me, or is it kind of sending me further down? And just making sure that like you just have that uplifting sort of attitude about who you're surrounding yourself with.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Curate your motivate. And again, everyone is motivated differently. So
Yes.
it's perfectly acceptable to hit mute on those people if needed
Yep.
and turn up the volume on the people that light you up, because at the end of the day, that's, if it lights you up, it's supposed to spark something. And that something is inside of you. So let that be sparked.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Annette,
Yeah.
where can people follow you and find more information about your community?
Yes. So of course I'm on Instagram, super fun at the underscore Annette Montgomery. We do have a lot of fun on my account. So and then I also have the community bolstered, and all of that is on AnnetteMontgomery.org. And bolstered is a new community. So we just started in March. And I like to think of it as sitting around having hot chocolate with all your business besties. So it's really for heart-centered massage therapists that want to refine their business skills in a really supportive, I mean, it sounds like so vanilla, but like a supportive, nurturing space. It is a more refined massage therapist. Like you were saying, sometimes the Facebook groups get a little noisy. This feels a little cozier. So yeah.
Yeah, and we'll link to everything in the show notes for you.
Okay. Well, thank
So
you.
anyone who's curious can go check you out. And I just want to say thank you so much. I have greatly enjoyed this. And definitely we should connect another time and kind of continue this conversation because there's so much to be said. And I know that as the massage business model continues to evolve with the technology that's evolving with us, there's going to be
Mhm.
so many more conversations to be had. So thank you for your time. It truly is a pleasure to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I always love chatting with you, Gretchen. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks for listening to The Sustainable Bodyworker. If something resonated for you today, grab your free breakthrough session, which includes a custom hypnotherapy track to help you unlock the next level. Grab it now with the link in the show notes. And to hear more, hit subscribe. We'll see you next time.